Alright guys, Ian here from 79 Sports Therapy. So today we're looking at neck injuries, and look, straight off the bat, neck injuries are really multifactorial. So if you are suffering, definitely go and get it sort of checked out first. Obviously, preferably here. But definitely get it checked out. Let's figure out what the issue is, what the diagnosis is, figure out a treatment plan, figure out the way in which we sort of move forwards with it. But today, as I say, we're looking at sort of neck injuries, and we want to be sort of quite specific on one specific sort of one specific component of neck injuries, and definitely kind of where we kind of feel we kind of get things a little bit wrong, a little bit misguided when it comes to a rehab and our management of it, and that is the strength component of it. And like I think it's really important always to kind of view what we do from a rehab point of view as like a Venn diagram, whereby we don't just have mobility, but we also have strength. It's very, very sort of common whenever we're speaking about sort of neck injuries often present as feeling kind of quite tight. Like that's the kind of overriding, the sort of common theme. Like we're kind of tight through there, therefore we do mobility, and that kind of makes sense. But I think for us, it's really important to then balance that strength side of it. And actually that strength side often then drives the mobility or the lack of mobility. And that's obviously sort of what we want to sort of address today. Like, are you doing enough strength work? Are you doing the right strength work to help them balance that mobility so we're then not just dumping mobility onto you? So when we're talking about the neck, I think it's kind of quite important to, yes, think about the sort of individual kind of structures, but also thinking about it as a sort of entire complex. So with this, we kind of get the view of what we would determine as being a sort of normal neck and then an abnormal neck. Here's some diagrams I produced earlier. So our normal neck, look, our normal neck is this one sort of up here. There is a slight sort of extension curvature to our kind of cervical spine in neutral. Okay, and I think that's really important to remember. But our normal neck is basically a balance of flexion musculature and extension musculature, small amount of sort of neutral kind of extension. But it's a very, very neutral balance of the sort of muscular tension of sort of how everything's kind of working through there. We then start to then think about then our kind of abnormal neck, and this is where we start to then get that sort of sensation of this, or the chat about the sort of text neck, this sort of excessive extension curvature. We get an imbalance. So we get an imbalance then of that sort of extension musculature pulling down harder, flexion musculature then being a little bit weaker, and we get that excessive curvature. Now the issue with this is, of course, that then sort of essentially shifts the head further forwards. Once we shift the head further forwards, we get an increased amount of sort of shear force of the neck. Because basically we shift beyond our pivot point, beyond our fulcrum point. So we can see the fulcrum point just down here, and you can see again in that sort of abnormal neck, it shifts that head a little bit further in front of that, so we get more shear force. That's already sort of fairly normal, so that head is slightly further forwards than our fulcrum point anyway, but once in that abnormal neck, we get that imbalance of our extension musculature massively overdriving our flexion musculature. That then pulls that head further forwards. We come into even more extension. It's that drives the shear force, and it's that drives our sort of pain, our sort of pathway to pain. So we start to see that posture is a real driver of our cervical pain, and that for me is what actually kind of forms my kind of three pillars of then how we start to kind of deal with this, right? So 3 pillars for me. First one, number 1, thoracic position. Super, super important. We kind of hark back to our kind of previous video that we did on sort of shoulder injuries and definitely the scapula. And again, understanding how like thoracic position really drives a change in then how that sort of scapula is functioning. It's kind of the same, exactly the same, driving up into our cervical spine. So for me, number 1, thoracic position, super, super important, really easy to fix. Secondary for that is then cervical position, right? We can't function then through our cervical spine if it's sort of out of place. You can be as strong as you like. If that cervical positioning is off, doesn't matter, you're still going to sort of run the risk of generating pain. And then third from that is then our strength. So we've got to get the position right, and then we can then load it up. When we think about strength, we've got to think about our flexors. They're the structures that we want to get strong. They're the structures we need to focus on because our movement is always biased by our extensors. Don't forget, if we think back, our normal position, we are slightly extended. We have a slight extension bias. Therefore, our flexors have to be doubly as strong to be able to then fight that. So in terms of addressing the sort of first two pillars, look, for me, fundamentally, they kind of are one and the sort of same thing. If you don't get that thoracic position right, don't get the cervical position right, and kind of vice versa, right? So, thoracic position. We've already kind of covered this in a previous video, but again, let's redress it, and let's redress it with sort of context to what's going on with our cervical spine, okay? So, poor thoracic position is an increase in kyphosis, an increase in the amount of which we flex. For me, I always reference sternum as that sort of mechanical point, as our reference point as regards where our sort of thoracic position is. If that sternum is pointing down, we're always going to be flexed. If that sternum is pointing kind of, sort of horizontal, pointing straight, we're always good. So as soon as that sternum sort of starts to point down, we collapse, right? We go into that kyphotic state. And again, where are we going to see this? Well, we're going to see this in our office workers. Again, that's that driver of the sort of tech's neck, etc., etc., etc. As soon as we drive this down, our cervical position has to change to accommodate, okay? So if we think, if we're in neutral, sort of through here, neutral is chin parallel to the floor. We're going to cover that in a tick. So chin parallel to the floor. As soon as I drop my thoracic spine, I look down at the floor. So I've got to change then my cervical spine to accommodate my change in that thoracic position. Okay, so as I drop this, I've got to come here because otherwise I'm going to be looking at the floor. If I then keep this in the same place, and again, this is why cervical position and thoracic position completely linked. If I keep this in the same place, that's an extension position, obviously. As I then bring my sternum back up, I'm in an extension. So I'm looking up at the sky. So I've then got to bring then my head back down again. So we start to see how a good thoracic position, which is sternum pointing straight, slightly up, is going to then necessitate that actually my chin then kind of comes back down. And again, that's then our sort of better cervical position. So better cervical position is we want that chin more or less parallel to the floor. Okay, so parallel to the floor in that position, it means again I have that nice balance of then my flexion musculature, my extension musculature. I'm able to stack. So my kind of vertebral bodies basically stack on top of each other in a much more neutral setting. I decrease the amount of shear force because again I bring my head back over the top of that fulcrum. Then all of a sudden I then get a much better cervical position that I can then base my strength off of. Again, it's got to be driven then by that thoracic position. So if that thoracic position is down, I've always got to sort of come into that more extended position then through my cervical spine. As soon as my thoracic position comes up, I can then bring that back down again and find that neutrality. So that third pillar then is our cervical strength. And we're going to run you through sort of 2 exercises, really simple, like home exercises. Don't need any kit at all. Really simple and easy to do. Again, as always with this, double check that you can do this. Obviously, if you have any neck pain, again, get it assessed, preferably here, top bananas. Get it assessed. Let's figure out what we've kind of got going on, and let's then put in place a good, solid and robust treatment plan. But yeah, let's run you through sort of 2 exercises, really simple. Come on. This way, come on. All right, so exercise number 1. This one is much more about almost recalibrating what our understanding and our sort of idea of posture is. And as much as anything, almost sort of creating like reference points for both our kind of sternum and also our sort of cervical position, so where our head is. And look, a lot of this is sort of born out of the fact that actually if we sort of say to you, okay, find us kind of good posture, right? You kind of go, well, I know I kind of need to kind of stand up, and I know I need to kind of get my shoulder blades back, but we don't necessarily know where the back of our head is. And whilst that seems like kind of quite a strange sort of notion, I think that that's actually really important in terms of referencing where our cervical position is. So for this as an exercise, we use the wall. The wall is our reference point. Obviously, it doesn't move. It's the same every single time. It allows us to create a sort of very reproducible position. So we can reproduce where our thoracic position is, where our scapular position is. So we can set our scapula and down, shoulder blade and down sort of position on the wall. And then from there, set them where our sort of cervical spine, almost sort of calibrate our cervical spine, cervical positioning to that, okay? From there, once we then find that good position, we can then load. So from there, we can then kind of go, actually, I can then produce force. We can produce an isometric force. Obviously, isometric is that we're going to sort of produce force, but there isn't going to be any movement. We can produce that isometric force and actually then start to then strengthen the flexion muscles in exactly the same position. So the same exercise, we then strengthen as well as then position. So in terms of position, that position has to be very, very reproducible. We're going to find sternum height first, then our thoracic position, then our scapular position, then our cervical position, then sort of from that, okay? In terms of the setup, we want bum flat against the wall. Okay, feet can go a little way away, you can bend your knees a little bit. That just slackens off those hamstrings a little bit and also then kind of gives the space to then find our back position. So, bum flat against the wall, feet a little way away, bend the knees a little bit. We're then going to think about our sternum height. Now, sternum height is very, very kind of simple. We've already sort of spoken about it. But essentially what we're going to do is we're just going to calibrate so that sternum comes round about parallel to the floor. So that nice kind of horizontal position. That's in our sternum height, okay? From there, shoulder blades should then sort of sit flat and sit back, so they're kind of flattish on the wall. And look, there are different variations in people. So obviously, if we generally kind of have a more kyphotic structure through our thoracic spine, and/or our scapular position is a little bit more protracted, then we might not be able to find completely flat on the wall, but somewhere kind of referenced around that is like perfectly fine. So we're going to find that position. So bum flat against the wall. Feet a little way away, knees bent a little bit. We're going to bring that sternum height up. We're going to bring our shoulder blades back. This is our shoulder and down position. So in terms of posture, that's our reference point for posture. Okay. Then we're going to think then about our sort of cervical position, and we're going to reference our chin. So chin comes down to a parallel to the floor. Okay. So again, we're finding that nice, neutral flexion extension balanced sort of position. Okay, then from there all we're going to do is we're just going to tuck our chin back. So we're going to tuck our chin back to the wall. Okay, so the back of my head is touching the wall. Okay, I can then bring my chin away from the wall, so chin poke. This is what that's called. So chin poke away from the wall, chin tuck back towards the wall, chin tuck away, chin poke away, chin tuck back. Now that movement is completely horizontal the whole time. So I'm going to come from nice posture. I'm going to chin tuck and chin poke. Chin tuck and chin poke. And what you notice is I'm never hyperextending. So I'm never trying to find the wall with the back of my head. Okay. So I'm never kind of coming back and kind of thinking, where's that wall gone? I'm just going as far as I can actually then retract. So as far as I can sort of tuck my chin in. That's as far as I go. Now for me, that's to the wall. For you, when you start this, you may well kind of be like, well, actually, I can't find the wall in that position. If you can't find the wall, no dramas. You go as far as you can, not as far as the wall. Okay. The idea then from that, once you can then find the wall, is to then start load on the wall. So as I say, it needs to be an isometric contraction. Isometric is that we're going to have force, but there's not going to be any movement. Okay, the wall isn't going to move. You're not that strong, so you can produce a nice progressive force on that. Okay, you're not going to try to sort of bash your head against the wall. It's going to be nice and smooth, nice and slow. The movement is identical. So again, we're going to find sternum height, shoulder blades back, etc., etc., etc. Find our chin position. We're going to tuck back to then touch the wall, and then we're just going to keep on tucking back further into the wall. Okay, what that looks like, again, feet a little way away from the wall, knees bent, bum flat against the wall, sternum height comes up, shoulder blades come back. Okay, chin is then going to come down to a parallel. I'm going to then tuck my chin in till I touch the back of my head to the wall. And then from there, I'm going to keep on driving that force into the wall, nice and progressively. Feel that load through our flexors, so through it underneath here. I always reference it, it's almost sort of underneath the ear. with those sort of flexors in there, that's where it almost feels as though it sort of builds from. So we're going to find the back of the head on the wall, then we're then going to just progressively force against it. Okay? Nice and simple, nice and easy. It's really easily repeatable because all you need is a wall. Okay? Again, find that sternum height, find the shoulder blades back, chin tuck, and as I say, that's then our reference point as regards our normal posture. So when we create posture during the day, that's what it should feel like. That's all of our reference points. You may well dial it down a little bit. It may well be a little bit softer, but that is our daily posture when it comes to thoracic position and cervical position. Right, we're going to move on to kind of exercise number 2. It's a little bit more about force and load than it is about position. Let's go. All right, so exercise number 2. As I say, it's a lot more about force and load, and actually just about the sort of just general kind of capacity to load of our cervical spine, rather than it being about position necessarily. There is a little bit of sort of positional sort of stuff with it, but it's a lot more about actually using the head, using gravity as a resistance tool, rather than actually kind of setting up a position. We're going to use the bed here. Obviously, at home you can use the floor. Obviously, we're going to be lying down. So the idea with this is we're going to be lying down in supine, or sort of like face up. And we're basically going to sort of do the same positional sort of test, sort of setup that we just did. So a little bit about sort of like sort of sternum position, a lot about chin position. So making sure that chin is actually now perpendicular to the floor, so at 90 degrees to the floor. Set that chin up, and then we're then going to go through a full flexion pattern. Now, a full flexion pattern is that same sort of squeezing the back of the head into the wall or into the bed or into the floor sort of position. It's that, as well as then coming into a full chin to chest sort of position. So the way in which we're going to sort of set this up, sternum height is pretty much going to be sort of as is, but again, just using that as a kind of reference point, really, really important. Then we're going to then set up chin perpendicular to the floor, so at 90 degrees to the floor. Then we're then going to squeeze the back of the head against the bed or against the floor. Then we're then going to go into a full chin tuck, so chin to chest, without lifting the head up yet. So keeping the back of the head on the deck. Then we're going to then lift chin to sternum. Okay. Then we're then going to just turn yourself to the back down again, and then reset. Reset that sort of position. I'm going to show you how it's done. Again, it's one of those ones, it feels kind of quite maximal. I always kind of remind people just to kind of go sort of fairly kind of slack jaw, relax the larynx a little bit, because we are firing up those SCMs. So sternocleidomastoid, that big muscle that sort of sits down here, what you don't want is to have a lot of tension sort of through here. It's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. So trying to relax everything as best as possible. We just want this to fire up. Okay? I'm going to have a little lie down, and we're going to set that up. Okay? So in this lying position, so we're going to be in that supine, so face up in the air. Again, you can see, actually, as soon as I kind of lie down, my thoracic position kind of sets itself up. So I don't necessarily have to worry too much about this. But again, you can always sort of calibrate it. If you do find yourself a little bit flexed, calibrate that position, get that thoracic spine in the right place. Again, scapula can kind of sort of sit flat. So again, we're nice and open then through our chest. Chin position. So typically what happens is when we lie down, that chin kind of like dips back, our head goes back into that kind of extension position. So again, bring that chin down so we're perpendicular to the floor. Okay? I then want to squeeze back. So my back of my head is on the bed. So I want to squeeze back and down into the bed. That gives a nice positive recruitment then through that through our flexors. So squeezing the back of the head down into there, good positive recruitment. I'm going to keep that tension on, so I'm going to keep squeezing down, and I'm going to take chin to chest. Okay? So you notice actually there's not a huge amount of movement because I'm still down, but again I've just heightened that flexor recruitment. Then I'm then going to take my chin to my chest. So now I've got this all out, I'm going to take chin to chest. Nothing else is going to move, so I'm not going to move from down here. I'm just going to move from here. So chin to chest, nice and slow back down again. Relax everything off, reset it again. What you notice, as I say, is there's a lot of tension down through here. So trying to relax everything around your mouth, around your larynx, super, super important. And get in that position again. So sternum height, so thoracic position, shoulder blades back, get that chin to perpendicular to the floor, okay? Then I'm then going to squeeze back and down. So I'm going to squeeze the back of my head into the bed. Nice positive engagement, nice positive recruitment through cervical flexors. I'm then going to take chin to chest without lifting my head. So chin to chest without lifting my head. Keeping that tension on. I'm then going to take my chin to my chest. So lifting my head, chin to chest. Nice and slow back down again. Relax, reset it. Give it a little go. It's definitely kind of quite awkward. You definitely need to practice it. But obviously, as long as you've done that recalibration stuff that we've already done, so that sort of cervical positioning on the wall, it should be good because it's exactly the same. All we're now doing is we're now adding in a loading element to it. Okay, so to wrap up, those 3 pillars then. So our thoracic position, our cervical position. Don't forget, they are linked. It's posture, but we've got to think about this driving this, not thinking about them as being sort of 2 sort of completely different things. Obviously, this is your mobility side of that Venn diagram. Mobility is still important, but it can't be the main driver. We've got to think about this third one, cervical strength. That's super, super important. If you don't get that right, all that mobility goes out the window because your body will just keep on fighting because it can't stabilize this. This is the super important thing that's going to glue those 2 back together again. But that's us for this time. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, comment. Let us know your thoughts and let us know any other sort of upcoming video topics that you want us to kind of cover. See you next time.